On 26th May 2014, the National Democratic Alliance, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, took the oath of office. It marked the beginning of a new political chapter in India. What followed over the next 12 years was not just a change in government, but an attempt to reshape the Indian state, economy, and society at a staggering scale. Bharat Reloaded, a special series to mark the 12th anniversary of the NDA, will look back at these momentous years through conversations with policymakers, economists, entrepreneurs, and investors. It will take stock of a decade that sought to reimagine India. I am your host, Anil Padmanabhan. Much of the conversation over the last decade has largely focused on GDP growth, welfare delivery, or infrastructure expansion. But beneath all of this lies a deeper shift, the changing architecture of the Indian state itself. Joining me today is Ashok Lahiri. As an economist, former professor, former chief economic advisor, former legislator, and currently the vice chairman of NITI Aayog, he is uniquely placed to reflect on this transformation. Dr. Lahiri, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Lahiri, you have had the good fortune of watching this makeover from so many vantage positions, like I listed a few. So, from pre-liberalization to the India's coalition era to now back to a single party government. So this governance has focused a lot on execution in these last 12 years. So what feels fundamentally different to you about the Indian state today?
Anil, I think a lot is different. First, few of us noticed that in 2016, 2016, the World Bank migrated us from a low-income country to a low-middle-income country. You know their classification, that's something like $1,146. If you're below that, you're a low-income country. If you're above that, you're a middle-income country. Again, within that middle-income country, you have a classification of low-middle-income country and upper-middle-income country. We are a low-middle-income country, but you will accept that it's better than being a low-income country. So we are no longer a low-income country. I spent most of my life in a low-income country. Today you live in a low-middle-income country. That's one. Second is, we have moved from being a technologically backward state to, again, I'll say, a technologically middling state. So much is different. Take, for example, I have traveled from Hyderabad to Bengaluru by bus in the 1970s. I had gone for an econometric conference. And now I can travel from Hyderabad to Bengaluru. It's very different. I traveled from Ahmedabad to Baroda, and I was surprised on the highway it's written minimum speed 100 kilometers. In my younger days, I could never imagine that an Indian road will say minimum speed 100 kilometers. Now I don't even have to go to the bank. I can do all the transactions online. Even for my most of my government transactions, I can file my return, income tax return, online. I can pay my municipal taxes online. The digital revolution has been tremendous. And then if you talk about the Indian state, there was a time from 1990s when we thought that we'll have to live in a coalition era. But that coalition era is gone. The Indian voter is electing government with single party majority. There is no threat to political stability. Literacy has improved. The health has improved. Life expectancy has improved. Have we improved enough as a policy maker? And I'll say no. You have to do more. But the Indian state is very, very different. And whether it's in their political behavior, whether in terms of what they want from the government. Now, the government have become the people have become very aspirational. And I'll just end this answer to this question with one example. I don't know, you must have been in school at that time when Babu Raj Krishna coined the term Hindu rate of growth. Why it was called Hindu, I don't know. We never thought about it. But the whole idea was that do what you like. Growth rate will be 3%, 3.25%, 2.75%, never more than that. Today, according to the IMF, we are growing at 6%. But the whole country is moaning that why is it 6%? Why not 8%? Now, if you believe that aspirations is the sole foundation of achievement, I'm extremely happy that 6% doesn't satisfy anyone. So that's the major difference.
Oh, it's extremely heartening. Dr. Lahiri, quick follow-up. You drew this arc of change so beautifully across all sectors. There's one pain point, which is the gap between intent and execution. Every government has always expressed its intent, but has fallen short in execution. That famous Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's remark that for every 1 rupee spent, only 15 paisa reaches the final beneficiary. So has that pain point been sorted also in the last 12 years?
Again, my answer is not enough. But there is progress. For example, even Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's point that money is siphoned off. But look at direct benefit transfer. I think direct benefit transfer has been a tremendous thing. Now the money that some vulnerable guy is getting, it goes straight to his bank account. Is there no scope for herafiri? There may be. I mean, some guy goes and says, this money will be only transferred if you pay me such and such money. And I'm an innocent poor man. I believe him, I give him the money. But otherwise, it's much more difficult than what it was previously to siphon off money. Execution, let me give you another example. National highway, we were building 12 kilometers per day. Now we are building 30 kilometers per day. Are we implementing or executing things as rapidly and as efficiently as we should? Answer is no. But we are doing better in every form. And I think that we must give some credit to Prime Minister Modi. Before he became Prime Minister, one of his fame, one of the reasons for his fame was his execution. He used to have single topics on which he would focus, like urban local bodies. He would spend 1 year looking at the problems of the urban local bodies. I think he continues to have that focus. He talks to chief secretaries, he talks to states, he talks to senior officials and wants to find out what happened. This was the guidepost. Have you achieved it? So I think as a prime minister, I've seen a few prime ministers. All of them were great. But Mr. Modi has much more focus on execution than the previous ones had.
In this ability to shrink the gap between execution and intent, what was the magic potion, as it were? Was it political will? Was it administrative system? Or was it technology, like you hinted in the case of DBT?
See, all three. I'll tell you why all three. First, I believe in a democracy. What people want is what politicians will give. Because I'm forgetting the name of the political scientist who said this, that politicians will formulate policies to win elections. They will not win elections to formulate policies. I'm being a bit too cynical. But it's for the people, by the people, of the people. So if people want something, the politicians will deliver. The political will also derives from the people. and the people have evolved. So it's political will coming partly from the people's desire
Mandate.
or mandate. It's technology. For example, JAM, Jan Dhan Yojana, Aadhaar linked identity and mobile connectivity. It's technology.
Yeah, it's an economic GPS.
Yes, fantastic, fantastic. And administrative systems, we have improved the administrative systems. There is no doubt about that. Have we, again, I'll be an apologist and say, have we made enough progress? No, there is plenty of scope to go. In fact, the Prime Minister sometimes says, why don't you tell me the best practice in the world? What is the thing that you should benchmark yourself to? I haven't done that as yet. Maybe we'll try doing that so that you know the distance that you are at from the best.
Dr. Lahiri, a key part of this makeover that we are talking about, rather a key variable, is NITI Aayog, your new brief. So it was created after abolishing the Planning Commission. So in that sense, NITI Aayog is NDA's legacy. Now, tell me, why was it abolished in the first place, Planning Commission, and you created an institution like NITI Aayog? And secondly, that how does it also signal a new approach to governance?
You have said it's an NDA legacy. But if I were to tell you the truth, much before the NDA came to power, even the other leaders were talking about abolishing the Planning Commission. I don't have documentary evidence, but if you talk to the people who know, they've often said, why is this Planning Commission there? Because you look at the mother of all planning commissions, Gosplan, in Russia. When 1991, the Soviet Union was abolished and Russia was born, Gosplan went. So 1991, we abolished the Planning Commission.
In
2014
or 2014.
2014. So 13 years later, when Deng Xiaoping came to power after Mao's demise, planning more or less disappeared from China. So even the Mecca of planning, Soviet Union and China, if they're doing that, it went from all over Eastern Europe. So you can't be saying that we were too rushed in abolishing the Planning Commission. But even if you don't have, what is the NITI Aayog difference between NITI Aayog and Planning Commission? Planning Commission talked about policies. NITI Aayog, we try our best to tell you about policies, but Planning Commission also used to give money along with policy. It's like a doctor. Every time you go and listen to his advice, he gives you money. Now you have a Planning Commission or an institution which gives you advice, policy advice, without the money. So it may be easier for you to judge whether that advice was worth the paper it was written on, because it didn't come with money. In the case of Planning Commission, you don't know whether the states were implementing things because it came with the money, or would they have done it even if the money was not there. So NITI Aayog, I think, would have come about even in a bipartisan way. But it required when you destabilize the current system, you require guts. So all you can say, this NDA had the guts to do it. Maybe the other government would have also done it. It is a matter of time. It was anachronistic to have a planning commission.
But on your NITI Aayog point, unlike Planning Commission, I'm not criticizing Planning Commission, just highlighting what NITI Aayog is doing different.
Planning Commission, actually, you're quite right. We shouldn't be criticizing Planning Commission, because at that time, you know about Paul Samuelson. Paul Samuelson thought that Soviet Union will steal the march against the United States. Planning was the fashion at that time. So I'm not at all criticizing my ancestors for having planning at that time. That was the accepted wisdom. But times changed. Our knowledge changed, we changed. What are you asking?
Saying that while you don't have the money bags which Planning Commission had, but at the same time you have undertaken tasks like the 2047 agenda, which includes the states. You also have other plans like the One Nation, One District, the aspirational districts. So there are a lot of other work going on which are involving both the center and the states, but not in the earlier format. So that relationship is still there, the
Of course.
cooperative federalism. Right?
Of course. In fact, I don't remember who said it, that apart from some union territories, every Indian stays in a state. No one stays at the center. So India will prosper only if states prosper. So states are extremely important. And there, NITI Aayog, one of our litmus tests is when we tell a state government, the chief ministers are our governing council, they're my bosses. So when we go and tell the state chief ministers, we think this is good for you. And if they accept, that gives us a fantastic satisfaction that we have been useful to the patient, because we are like doctors and we want them to be healthy and doing well. So, of course, we rely on states to implement our recommendations.
Yeah, they're like patients with bad habits, some of them. So I just want to come back to this point that you just mentioned, that
even the center is our patient. We tell the center also a few things.
True. In fact, the whole idea to whittle down the public sector undertakings, the whole ease of doing business, a lot of them were driven by NITI Aayog in the past. I just want to just stay on this cooperative federalism. See, both the center and the states, if you go back to 1991, which you mentioned, then the reforms was out of compulsion. India was facing a massive balance of payments crisis, and it had to do what it did. Not that it didn't know what it had to do, but it was not willing to do it earlier. But if you fast forward, in the last 12 years, both the center and the states, several states, reforms is a choice. The best example of cooperative federalism is GST, where both the center and states pooled their tax sovereignties and created this fantastic tax which economically unified India for the first time, right?
I think you're being unfair. You're being unfair to the 1991 government, Narasimha Rao as Prime Minister and Manmohan Singh as Finance Minister. Because you see, foreign exchange crisis, balance of payments crisis was not new to India. I think we have run to the IMF about 5-6 times. Suez crisis, the first oil price shock, the second oil price shock, 1965. It has happened several times. True, when you're pushed to the wall with your back to the wall, you may have to do a lot of things. But previously, once the crisis was over, we went back to our merry old ways. But 91, we did not. The crisis was over. I think we returned the money to the IMF before time. But we continued and we didn't go back to our merry old ways. So India in 1991 had already acquired some maturity not to go back. We could have reinvented the wheel and gone back to the merry old days. So it's not completely correct to say that it was reform by compulsion. And mind you, if you read the books that contemporary history, you are a journalist, so you know better. Even the previous government, before Narasimha Rao, Chandrasekhar was the Prime Minister. Some wise men tell me that Chandrasekhar had already drawn up what is to be done, because after coming to power, the new government wouldn't have been able to agree to all the conditions and so on in such a short time. Having said this, to be fair to Narasimha Rao government, I'll say now there is no IMF, World Bank sort of knocking on our doors, do this, do that. Their position is also almost like the NITI Aayog. If they're given advice, we may take the money, we may not if it's concessional, not concessional. But your advice will be judged by the wisdom that it contains. So, true, now what we are doing is not because of coercion or, or being in a desperate state.
So you're right. In 1990, the budget, which became a vote on account, Yashwant Sinha was the finance minister then, was the one who first coined the term disinvestment of public sector undertakings. So they were preparing the ground because the crisis was building at that point of time. My point is that even while, yes, they should be credited for what they did, when you look back, it was low-hanging fruit. I think a lot of the stuff that has been undertaken in the last decade has been tough, hard-nosed economic reforms, particularly it's like ease of doing business, which NITI Aayog has worked very closely. So that was my larger point. I just want to stay on this theme of governance. Another big legacy of the NDA has been the digital public infrastructure. Again, it was something which was handed over from the previous regime. The launch of Aadhaar provided the basis for creating the DPI infrastructure in this country, which changed the governance which you attributed to direct benefits transfer using economic GPS, Jandan Aadhaar Mobile. So tell me, how has this changed the relationship between the citizen and state thanks to this pivot?
Normal citizens will tell you it was not something that they're looking forward to, that I have to go to this government office for this. So this has been a boom. Even when I file my income tax return digitally, the fact that I don't have to go to some income tax office, I look forward to it, despite being a government servant. So the relationship between the government and the citizens. Do we have a relationship? Yes, we do. The citizen interacts with the government when he goes to the government hospital, when he goes to the primary health center, when he goes to the municipality for some. So the relationship between the state and the citizen has been elevated to a different level. Now they will complain about roads, they will complain about water supply, they'll complain about schools, they'll complain about hospitals, and that is the way it should be. I'm looking forward to that day when even these complaints will become, there's nothing to complain about the government hospital. You went there, the OPD was functioning properly, you got a bed, and you were treated properly. Or you send your little nephew to a primary school, government primary school, not private, and he's doing very well. So it's the quality of service that has become now the main point of discussion between the citizen and the state. And this is being mediated by the politicians. Trust me, when you stand for election, when you contest the election, which I did, what people complain about is, why isn't this road functioning properly? It's difficult to tell them that you are fighting as an MLA. An MLA has nothing to do with this road. It's the councillor who is responsible, or the municipal council. But they wouldn't, or the state government is responsible. But politicians have become answerable for these public services. That's a great change and a welcome change.
So, Dr. Lahiri, if we look forward from where you just left off, that how aspirations are on the rise and now citizens are holding politicians accountable for tangible projects like roads, electricity, sewerage and all. So when you look ahead, how do you, especially given your background as an MLA, so you have worked with at the grassroots level, as it were. So given all that, when you look ahead, I mean, some concerns are very obvious, but what is the kind of governance agenda that you would lay down as Ashok Lahiri and as Vice Chairman of NITI Aayog so that India achieves its audacious goal of becoming a developed economy by 2047?
Anil, you know me for a few decades. I'm an eternal optimist. One of the problems that India faces is petty corruption. And I think corruption is being punished by the people. Voters don't like it. Sometimes they have to put up with it. Because an MLA, I'm not corrupt, but even if you have a corrupt MLA, what can you do? There is no recall, so you have to suffer it for 5 years. But come 5 years, at the end of 5 years, next election, the corrupt one will face some wrath of the people. So, one is the people must become more informed and more intolerant. If they don't like inefficient and corrupt politicians, they must reject them. And I think that is happening. I don't think it's only my optimism that is trying to read that in the tea leaves. But
So people will set the agenda.
people set the agenda.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Dr. Lahiri.
Thank you.
Over the last decade, the NDA government has not merely expanded programs or launched schemes. It has attempted something far more ambitious: reimagine the Indian state to move from fragmentation to integration, from entitlement to delivery, from incrementalism to execution at scale. But today's conversation with Dr. Lahiri reminds us that the story of modern India may ultimately be less about individual policies and more about the evolution of the Indian state itself. And that, once again, lies in the hands of the people. Thank you for watching.